Hello everybody, welcome back. Gavin McCormack here. Now we are in the Scotia Sea in South Georgia, and this week we're talking all about food webs or food chains, and we are very lucky to be with Pat again. Hello Pat.
Hey Gavin, how are you?
I'm very good. Pat is a marine biologist. Pat, what are you wearing?
I'm wearing a dry suit.
Why are you wearing a dry suit?
We're catching boats here on the shore, so it means we can catch them in the waves. I'm completely dry underneath, and even though I'm wet on the outside, I'm still warm.
Amazing, just like a fur seal.
Exactly.
Now this week we're talking all about food webs. As you can see behind us, there is so much life here. Penguins, fur seals, krill, fish, all living together in harmony. It's very complicated down here, isn't it?
Definitely.
The food web, there's so many layers to it. Now down at the bottom of the food web, we have these things called producers. What's a producer?
So producer is any sort of mainly plant life, things that actually produce their own energy from the sun. So through the process known as photosynthesis, they take the sun's energy, they convert that into sugars, which is part of their body.
Amazing. So they use the sun's power, make their own energy, and hence they're called producers.
Yeah.
Now these are things like phytoplankton, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So they sit at the bottom of this food web or the food chain, and they're really, really important.
They are.
Are there a small amount of these or a large amount?
There's a huge amount of phytoplankton, a huge variety of phytoplankton, and yeah, it really is the basis of the food chain. So everything really relies on the phytoplankton itself.
Even human beings, how does phytoplankton help us?
Even us, it feeds the animals that we go fishing for in the sea. So through the many steps of the food chain, it's coming all the way up to even us as ourselves.
That's right, and also they're climate activists, aren't they, phytoplankton? They do something about, they absorb carbon dioxide.
Yeah, they absorb carbon dioxide. They produce about half of the world's oxygen as well.
Goodness me.
And they store carbon. They sink to the bottom of the sea when they die, and they store it down in the depths.
Oh my goodness, not only are they feeding all these amazing animals, they're actually keeping the climate nice and cool.
Exactly.
And producing oxygen for us to breathe.
Yes.
Now next on the food chain, or the food where we have the secondary consumers.
Yes.
What are these?
So this is the zooplankton. So the zooplankton is the animal part of the plankton. So krill is a really important thing in the ecosystem here. But not only krill, you've got lots of other crustaceans, things we call cophepods, amphipods, isopods as well, all kinds of little jellyfish too, and all kinds of other life. But these are all tiny little microscopic creatures that float around in the surface, and they eat all the phytoplankton.
Wow.
And krill is probably the most important here, but the krill grows a bit bigger, up to 6 centimeters down in these waters.
And there's about, I read, 700 trillion individual krill here.
That's a lot of krill.
That's a lot of krill. So the sun beams down on Earth, the producers absorb that and change it into energy. And then the secondary consumers, do they eat the phytoplankton?
Yes, they do. Krill as well, they really like a type of phytoplankton called diatoms. Diatoms is one of their favorite and most important food sources.
Okay, right, that's amazing. So there's this kind of passing on of energy.
Yeah, exactly. It goes
Okay.
up from level 1 to level 2.
And let's go to level 3. So level 3 is our primary consumers. We get to the next level. And it sounds to me like they're getting a little bit bigger each time.
Yeah, we are getting to a larger stage when we get to that level. You've got things like different kinds of fish that will eat the krill. You also got your penguins and your seals will eat them too. So quite a variety, from very small animals to some quite large ones too in this level.
Right, so these animals we're looking at here, these are primary consumers.
Yeah, these guys here. So our fur seals, our king penguins, these guys do feed on the krill itself, as well as other little fish and things like that.
That's unbelievable. And then we get to the big boys. We get to the apex predators. So we understand now the sun beams down on the Earth, we have producers making their own energy and sugars, secondary consumers eating them, primary consumers, and then we get to the top of the food chain, the apex predators. Who sits at the top?
So at the top, we've got things like our leopard seals, who feed on the penguins and some of the seal pups, as well as your killer whale, your orca. They also feed on a lot of these larger animals too. And they're so big, they're so tough that nothing is feeding on them.
Right. Now, this is very complicated. I mean, what happens, this delicate ecosystem we've got here, what happens if something is removed? You see, in the world right now we have overfishing, for example, or people have decided to take lots of krill oil, and we have big fishing boats out here taking hundreds of thousands, even millions of krill from the ocean. What happens if we remove some of the things at the bottom of the food chain?
Yeah, well, everything is really connected. So you take away what's at the bottom, means there's less food for things further up. So you take away the krill, it means there's less food for the penguins and the seals. It means that there's less of them, which means there's less food for then your orcas and your leopard seals too. So everything is affected if you do mess with one level.
And one of those things that's really pressing right now is climate change. If the Earth heats up, what happens to these creatures at the bottom, the phytoplankton?
Yeah, well, the phytoplankton can get really effective, and they're actually finding in Antarctica, with the ice melting and more fresh water going into the ocean, it's changing some of the diatoms, which are the krill's main food source. And that may potentially affect how they feed into the future and how many krill there might be.
That's right, and we want our children at home to be able to come and visit this place and see all this amazing life behind
Exactly.
it, which is really, really important. Now we have our 4 layers: producers, secondary, primary, and then we get our apex predators. Are there any creatures that don't follow this rule, that just bypass the entire system? A big creature that goes right to the bottom of the food chain and eats huge amounts of small creatures, but is very big.
Yes, we do, and that's some of our big baleen whales. So things like our humpback whale, our fin whale, which we've been seeing. These guys, they'll come in and they eat the krill. So instead of going up through the levels, they take from those primary consumers. And you might think it's weird that such a big animal is eating such a little one, but there's so much krill. So one big mouthful of krill still means so much food for them.
And I guess these baleen whales have very big mouths.
They do, huge mouths, and often their throats will expand to a huge size as well to allow them to fit all the krill in and swallow down a big mouthful.
How crazy. Now this week we want you to research this entire ecosystem, this biome. This is a sanctuary, a haven for animal life to thrive. But we want you to understand all the animals that are included in this complicated system. Around us now we have fur seals, we have penguins, and we have fish that you can't see, but there are hundreds of thousands of creatures that actually live in this ecosystem to make it all work. And this week we want you to find out about every single one and create something called a food web. And when you've finished, we want you to take that down to another class and make sure that they understand how important sustainability is. Pat, it has been a pleasure.
Thank you, Gavin.
We'll let you get back into the ocean with the seals, and we'll see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.